please remember that nothing we say here should be taken as personal advice. The conversation is for entertainment purposes only. If you have questions about your financial situation, please talk to a licensed financial advisor.
Let's go.
Hey everyone, this is Eyal, managing partner at Gerber Kawasaki.
And Hatem, managing partner as well.
Welcome to Future Money, where we talk about the technologies of the future
that will make us money.
Today we got a very special guest. I'll let Hatem introduce our guest here.
Yeah, this is our 4th episode, and we wanted to bring the heavy guns today. We try to find thematic ideas that make sense, and we want to delve deeper into them. And today we invited Pedro, who's one of the lead analysts and researchers at Global X, which is an awesome company, investment management company that we work with, that really has a lot of the similar ideas and themes that we think about at Gerber Kawasaki. Yeah. But what Pedro brings to the table is really the value that we bring to our clients, which is additional brains and thinking about some of these themes. And today we're going to talk about
EVs, lithium technologies, all the stuff that everyone who follows us loves. Going back to what you're saying, Hatem, we are very big in this space, but it's not just us. Part of the research that we do here at Gerber Kawasaki is helping us, and we enlist other people, other experts in our areas, especially in the areas of thematic investing. For those of you who are ETF shareholders or who have invested with us for a while, you understand that this is kind of what we do, is we invest thematically, and we look at companies within themes that we really believe are the future. So we're really pumped about this.
Yeah.
We're gonna make it light. We might get a little bit geeky on some levels, but we'll try to keep it not too geeky. So Pedro, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, I'll definitely try not to make it too geeky, but I know. Great to see you, Hatem, Eyal. Awesome being here.
You like our Tesla?
That's a cool Tesla there. Yeah. My background. Yeah, my background sounds good. Yeah.
No, thank you for making the time, Pedro. I mean, we over the years I've known you, and I really appreciate everything Global X and you do for us. This is a special subject for us. Full disclosure, we own some of your ETFs, so some of the biggest holdings for us, and they've done really well for our clients. So thank you for that too. But this subject is very dear and near for us, and I think the battery technology is probably one of the most consequential technologies over the next 10 years for not just mobility, but for a lot of businesses, right? And you guys have probably one of the best ETF in the business, and you're part of that research. So I'd like to talk about that. So maybe start there. Talk to us a little bit about how LIT came about and how you guys kind of thought this theme as EVs and batteries going to change the world, basically.
Absolutely. And believe it or not, LIT was launched back in 2010. So it's been a long way since we launched LIT. Full disclosure and full transparency, when we decided to launch that fund, it was more to capture the growth of lithium demand from consumer electronics. That was, if you look at the lithium market, that was what was driving the incremental growth for lithium demand. Now, of course, things change, fast forward to 2016, 2017, Tesla started entering into the picture. We started seeing EV sales picking up and battery costs starting to decline. And all of the sudden, we started to realize that, lithium is the foundational raw material for lithium ion battery technology. Of course, we knew that from consumer electronics. It was just a change in the investment case. And now we have a product, a LIT or ETF, that sits at about $5 billion in assets under management as we speak. One of our largest thematic ETFs. But now as we think about the next 10 years for LIT and lithium and battery tech, the growth is just getting started. We're just touching on the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the growth of the space.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's good to be lucky, right? I mean, I'll take that too, you know.
Not lucky. We used it in all of the iPhones, right?
Yeah.
iPhones were the big thing back then, so Teslas are the new iPhones.
Well, listen, you go from, I think there is 5 grams of lithium in an iPhone and 25 kilograms of lithium in an EV. So it changes.
Not too different.
But first of all, Pedro has a really sexy accent, so let's talk about that first. Pedro, a little background, where are you from, and kind of, how did you get to start with Global X?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, originally from Venezuela, although parents from Italy, so that's why the last name and the very strong accent here by speaking Spanish and Italian. But I got to know about Global X from being a client of Global X. Before I used to work on the buy side, and actually the first fund that I also invested when I was on the buy side, it was on LIT. So that was probably 7 years ago, and that's how I started to get to know the team, to get to know the head of research, of course, everything from a client standpoint. And 3 years ago now, I joined Global X. Back in the day when I started, we used to have only about 14, 15 thematic ETFs. Right now, we have 33 thematic ETFs. I would say the most comprehensive suite of thematic ETFs in the market. And of course, we're just trying to provide investment solutions across multiple areas: video games, esports, or lithium and battery tech, robotics and autonomous vehicles. So that's where really what we're trying to do here at Global X.
Awesome. Well, let's jump into it. Let's talk about the EV market. And I think maybe we just talk about right now, lithium battery technologies obviously are powering, obviously we all know about Tesla and how they're kind of the leaders in the space, but who are the players in this space, specifically in the lithium production? And then we could talk about battery technologies also.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. So starting with miners, right? Upstream, you have key companies such as Albemarle, SQM, Ganfeng Lithium in China, Tianqi Lithium also in China, and Livent. I would say that the combined supply from those 5 players is approximately 75% of total lithium supply in today's market environment. So very concentrated, very opaque-like type of exposure for miners. Let's see, for example, SQM, really good company, Chilean company. What it's interesting about them is that beyond being the second largest producer behind Albemarle, is that they're expecting to increase capacity faster than any other miner over the next 5 years. Actually 4 years now as we're entering 2022. So approximately they're expecting to increase capacity by 3.5 times 2021's levels by 2025. So it's a company that it's expected to grow fast and definitely benefit from the rise in lithium prices. And we can talk about that in.
So remember SQM, Hatem?
Yeah,
remember we did a while ago, a long time ago.
So we'll talk about miners versus processing. So lithium in general, though, Pedro, it's very abundant, right? Like the metal itself is available everywhere, but the problem is processing it, right?
Correct. Exactly. Everywhere. I mean, and Elon Musk has said this in several locations. It's easy to find, even here in the United States, plenty of lithium under the earth. However, you need to have the right geographical conditions, and that's something that you can find in Latin America, for example, in the lithium triangle. But at the same time, it takes a lot of time to bring that lithium to market. It takes somewhere between 3 to 5 years to produce lithium from the time you put your capital on the ground. So for companies to start investing in lithium, it's going to take some time to get to see an ROI. And that's why sometimes you don't get to see too many projects. Although here in the United States, you already have a few projects that are expected to start production over the next few years.
Yeah, I read this weekend actually about the Salton Sea in California. They're trying to get lithium from deep within the earth, and I read thousands of feet within the earth. So that seems like a crazy undertaking, and something that probably you're talking about. And I don't know if that is something that's feasible in the future.
I mean, we're just in the very early innings to see how the industry will evolve here in the US. I mean, probably the best example here, guys, is the Lithium Americas, that company, they have a project in Nevada called Thacker Pass. It's the largest known resource of lithium here in the United States, so very, very large lithium resource. And they're actually expecting to be the first carbon neutral lithium producer in the industry. So very powerful. Here, they're planning to produce about 60,000 metric tons of lithium. Again, very early innings, a lot of companies trying to explore lithium resources. But I guess that's just one example of what we're seeing here in the United States.
Right. Awesome. So let's reframe this in the EV market, and then obviously grow beyond EVs. If we're selling 5% of cars right now are EVs of all cars sold, and I think probably growing at 100% plus over the next 10 years or so. At 2035, I think California said all cars need to be EVs. How much lithium we're going to need, and that's, I know I'm not putting in the spot here, but give me a number.
Big number. 7
Yeah,
billion.
that's a fair question. For context, 2021 lithium demand, we had about 400,000 metric tons. By 2030, next 8 years or so, all the miners are expecting to have a demand somewhere between 2.5 million to 3 million metric tons of lithium demand. Now, this is based on conservative EV cell penetration numbers. So if you're thinking about EV cells being approximately 50% of total car sales by 2030, that's the lithium number in terms of demand. If you guys are thinking 100% EV penetration, that number is just much higher than that. So that's why it's really important, lithium for the market, and potentially also the bigger risk for EV adoption, because like I said before, it's not easy to bring lithium to market. So the raw material component is something that could be the biggest risk for EV adoption over the next few years.
Yeah. I've so many things I want to ask you about.
Yeah,
Well,
totally.
first of all, China, right? Like, how important is China in this whole process? Because they've been early on the EV, and I think that's why they have. But also, like, from an investment thesis, and I'll talk a little bit about SQM. In my experience, and I've been doing this for a while, oftentimes you don't make money in the commodity. You make money kind of upstream, right?
Picks and shovels.
Right, picks and shovels, finished product, marketing, and really being able to bring the product to market and have those margins on it. Is that true in the lithium space too right now?
I would say that, actually today, the picks and shovels like miners are showing the highest profitability across the board, even more than the downstream market. Like, think about it. Like, lithium prices are sitting today at about $55,000 per metric ton. You can produce lithium somewhere between 5,000 to 6,000 metric tons in most cases. Of course, you have other projects that you can mine for $12,000 per metric ton, more expensive. Usually hard rock is more expensive than brine. However, profitability is massive under today's environment, and that's because we're seeing a lithium deficit. Of course, again, being fully transparent, I wouldn't expect lithium prices to stay that high. However, because of the deficit and potentially the continuation of deficit over the next few years, prices could stay that high. But historically, before EVs, lithium prices were pretty much flat at about $6,000 to $7,000 per metric ton. So very low margins, but now things are changing. Lithium is, instead of becoming like a key raw material, is becoming this specialty chemical for the EV industry. And back to your first question, Hatem, China, incredibly important for the industry. Some numbers that I have here on my screen, 60% market share when it comes to lithium processing today, 75% of battery cell production, and of course, it's also the largest EV market in the world. So definitely, China has a special position in the space today.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people are concerned about Chinese investments because of kind of what's going on with President Xi, and all the Chinese listed stocks in the U.S. But this is
So formal of you, President G.
President Xi. What do you want me to call it? So Xi Jinping. You know, my buddy Xi and I, we sometimes. No, I'm kidding. I'm not my buddies with Xi. Let's make that very clear, so it's not taken out of context. But a lot of that is Chinese companies listed in America that are really the problem, right? Like, you know, do you guys foresee any like major challenges with China controlling so much of the, you know, lithium production in the world?
Great question. It's definitely, you know, from a geopolitical standpoint, one of the major risks. On our ETF, we're actually trading Chinese listed securities in most cases on both Shanghai and Shenzhen stock exchanges. So from a delisting standpoint, we're really mitigating that potential risk. Now, again, China definitely is an incredible player in the industry. I think investors are actually favoring policy-friendly segments within China, like the EV supply chain, relative to favoring, you know, things like e-commerce or internet in China. You know, Alibaba, Tencent, Pinduoduo, all of those companies are getting hit by regulators. That's not the case in climate change friendly themes like the EV supply chain. So for investors, I think this is a sweet spot in China to continue to be positive on. You know, on the other side of things, of course, those segments being hit by policies are probably, you know, facing a lot of volatility recently.
Yeah. Got it. To quote our friend Devin, Emperor G likes EVs.
Yeah.
So he's not gonna hurt you know, the whole industry per se.
No, my thought is basically can they use this as a bargaining chip against the U.S.? You know what I mean? Like that's ultimately, I think, as a national security threat to the U.S., as an existential threat really to the U.S. Is this something that they can now say, well, we control the lithium supply, like let's negotiate other things?
I think every battery made in the world has to go through China for processing. Isn't that true, Pedro?
Yeah, again, about 60 to 70% of lithium gets processed there. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think, and listen, and also when you trade with a country, you have it's least likely to have conflicts with them. So hopefully we can keep trading.
But there's no conflicts with China and the U.S., right? We're buddies.
Yeah, we're buddies.
Yeah,
and that's a bigger conversation.
Totally. All right. Let's move on to the next topic. We won't get into the existential threat of China here.
Yeah, but listen, we were late to the game. China is early, but we're always the U.S. is good at playing catch up. We have a lot of good technology here.
Well, yeah, our advantage is always on the downstream, on the technology side, right? On the innovation, and you know, I think obviously we all know that Tesla was ahead of the game here, both in EV production, but also, you know, one of the biggest things, one of the reasons that we've been most bullish on Tesla is their sort of cornering of their own lithium cells and you know, their battery technology.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. You know, downstream, the U.S. is definitely one of the leading countries just because of Tesla's approach and Tesla's leadership position to the EV market. To your point, Tesla has been working here in the United States in their Gigafactory with Panasonic on their JV for over a long period of time. Now in China, they're also working with a few other battery manufacturers like CATL and LG Chem. Tesla has by far the best batteries in the market today, probably 1 or 2 years ahead of competition. However, you know, there are new entrants that could potentially threaten that position, but Tesla continues to lead at the moment, and something that, you know, we're quite positive on the company moving forward. Beyond EVs, all the FSD components, the full self-driving components, and all the other kind of potential business opportunities are quite strong. So happy to talk about Tesla a little bit more if you guys.
I put some solar panels, some Tesla solar panels in my house with the power walls last month. I cut my electricity bill I live in Venice by half. Now my electricity bill was orbitantly expensive.
Like I don't know why. Electricity bill on the planet.
I don't know why. But I don't know. Maybe my dog is on the treadmill all day. I don't know.
I'm not sure what you're doing.
But you know, I think California is leading the way in installing global warming, right? Like it's here. You know, if you can put a battery in your house and put some solar panels, especially, you know, it's what, we're February 8th today. It's 75 degrees outside.
It's going to be 90 this week in LA.
And it's during the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
So we have 330 days of sun here. I get a software on my phone right now telling me that my house is 100% autonomous with solar panels. I think we've seen California is doing this. It's happening. You know, how big is that market? Like, besides the mobility, how big is that market? And now obviously Tesla is doing a great job. There's other players in there.
Yeah, battery storage is really important. You know, when you think about the overall battery storage market, the mobility segment is by far the largest. Probably, you know, by 2030, it will be like 90% of the total battery market. However, you know, stationary energy storage and batteries as well for consumer electronics are going to be pretty much 5% each by 2030. In terms of how big that market is, if we look at the overall battery ecosystem again, in 2020, you're talking about an industry that was 750 gigawatt hours. That's expected to grow to about 4,000 gigawatt hours by 2030. Of course, it's not going to grow in dollar amounts as much, just because battery costs continue to decline. So, and that's why, you know, today you're talking about a market that it's probably $50 billion. By 2030, about 4 times that current level. So again, it's not going to grow probably as much as the other segments because of the decline in battery costs, which we expect to see happening over the next 10 years. But it's definitely a massive market. And you know, when you think and when you have people saying, what's going to happen with renewable energy when the sun is not shining and when the wind is not blowing? Well, this is the solution, right? Energy storage and a very robust technology right now in place.
Yeah. I actually get some numbers from Goldman Sachs on this, which were eye-popping to me. We have 20% compound annual growth rate for residential batteries. The TAM is about $200 billion by 2030. And we have a 51% decline in cost of batteries over the next 10 years, you know? So it's just happening, you know, and lithium is right in there. California went from 1.3 gigawatt hour in 2019 to 3.6. So they almost tripled in 2 years.
It's going to be disproportionate though, right? Like, you know, in the US, California, Florida, right? The South is going to be disproportionately becoming more solar. The problem is a lot of the South is also not into this whole green energy thing that, you know, we're all talking about.
Hey, listen, now you can't deny the cost is cheaper, right?
That's the big thing.
It's economics.
You know, my family's from Israel. People have been using solar in Israel since the 70s.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a new technology. Like, the battery storage is definitely new, and we've been able to do it. But yes, the costs are now becoming more effective to the point where now you can't deny it. Now you can't just say, oh, well, I don't believe in green energy. Well, believe in how much money it saves you.
Right.
Yeah. But so I want to go back to EVs again real quick, and just let's talk a little bit about what the total addressable market is for EV, right? So right now, I think, was it even 5%? I thought it was like maybe even 3%. But maybe Pedro can enlighten us on, you know, what the total EV sales were this year. I think, you know, they said worldwide we're somewhere between 75 and 80 million cars a year are being sold. What is the total addressable market ultimately? Will EVs ultimately supplant ICE vehicles? And where do we go from here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's see, 2021 EV sales about slightly above 6 million vehicles. So to your point that global car sales are 75 to 80 million, you know, you end up with that penetration rate of slightly, right around kind of the 5% number, slightly less. This year, probably expecting like 10 million EVs being sold around the world. Now, in terms of market size, those 80 million vehicles sold represent $4 trillion in annual revenue opportunity for car companies. So It's a very massive industry. We at Global X are expecting that EVs are going to represent approximately 35 to 40% market share by 2030. Now, that's a little bit conservative, but also because we need to factor in kind of those raw material risks that I mentioned before. But even then, we're talking about an industry that is $1.5 trillion by 2030 from about 150 to 200 billion dollars last year. Still expecting some figures there, but probably around that number.
So I have a question about that. I feel like, if we live in Elon Musk's future where robo taxis and full self-driving and Teslas that don't break down ultimately, do we see that overall that 80 million number coming down significantly because people just don't need to buy as many cars if they're hailing robo taxis and Teslas go 1 million, 2 million miles without breaking down?
Would that be awesome in LA?
That'd be amazing. That'd be amazing. But for the total addressable market, now we're talking about, maybe it comes down because of that.
Yeah, I think we reached back in 2019 peak car sales around the world, and I think that number is going to go down for exactly the same reasons that you mentioned, right? The future of the industry is electric, autonomous, and shared. Mm-hmm. And that shared component is going to cause the total car sales being down, and also the autonomous component. However, it's interesting because we could argue that robo taxis, for example, are going to be the entry point for autonomous vehicles, because for us as consumers to go and buy level 5 autonomous vehicle is going to be extremely expensive, probably over the next 5 to 6 years. So robo taxis are really going to be that entry door to try out the technology, to have consumers feeling a lot better about autonomous vehicles and understand the risks and probably the advantages as well of the technology.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, listen, I'm a little biased, but I have a Tesla, and my level 3 right now is amazing. And I can't wait for 4 and 5. So
do you use the full self-driving technology quite often or not?
As often as I can. I wish my wife did too, because
I only have measly autopilot. I'm one of the peasants who still only has autopilot
all the time. It's learning. It's not perfect. Definitely not. But
that's
you can see where the future is.
It's AI.
Yeah.
So with that, right, and the the continued, let's say, work from home or flexible work schedule and all that kind of stuff, are we going to need to use cars nearly as much as we are today? So I think number one, the robo-taxi, right, becomes a more viable opportunity if I'm only driving to the office 2 days a week versus 5, right? Maybe this moderates lithium prices over time. Maybe this reduces the overall addressable market, but ultimately the companies who have the technology will flourish because of this, and that's the idea behind Tesla.
Yeah, but I think we'll electrify everything.
That's
buses, semi-trucks, like anything.
But
everything.
In the end, won't they all be autonomous? I don't. That could be 20 years from now, but
we have some time. I think we have to.
Yeah, but those cars don't break down as much, I think, is the big thing.
Sure.
And so that means global sales will be lower.
You don't want to go to mechanic school right now.
I mean, I've had a Tesla since 2015. I'm on my 3rd different one now. I've literally taken it to the dealer once in 6 years.
Dealers.
Or the Tesla service center / store, whatever you want to call it.
Showed up at a Mercedes dealer. Can you fix this?
Can you fix my Tesla? They're like, I don't understand what this is. No, literally one time in 6 years.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, right?
Yeah. So I kind of want to sort of piggyback on this to say, okay, we're talking EVs, we're talking total addressable market and all this lovely stuff. What technologies exist out there, either imminent or on the horizon 5-10 years from now, that may potentially supplant EVs and become a new, we've heard of hydrogen fuel cell. I don't think that's really kind of happening, but maybe it is at some point. Is there something out there?
Yeah. What are we missing, Pedro? Like what's there?
Yeah, great question. I mean, hydrogen is an alternative, but really not for passenger vehicles. It's really something that it probably can work over the next 5 years or so. With
planes, maybe.
What's that?
For planes, maybe.
Hydrogen explodes very easily, really? So I don't know if that's the way we want to do it.
I don't know about that one, but I think when it comes to EVs and when it comes to lithium-ion battery technology, this is a space where we're going to have these technologies being around for the next 10 to 20 years at the least. Tesla is fully committed to lithium-ion battery, including the next generation of lithium-ion battery technology, which is solid-state batteries. So, that's definitely where we see the space going. It's really going to be an evolution and development of the existing technologies. Lithium-ion batteries have been around for 30 years or so, and it's just going to be an evolution of the same technology, different chemistries, different raw materials, but all in trying to make it cheaper, make it better, higher range, higher energy density, and all of that good stuff.
I think that's where the 4680 battery comes in.
Can we talk about solid state a little bit? Can you explain to everybody what that means?
Let's geek out.
Let's geek out just a little bit. We got like 3 minutes of geeking here. Let's do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, if we step back for a second here, a lithium-ion battery is composed of, and here comes the geeky part, the cathode, the anode, a separator, and an electrolyte. So currently, that electrolyte is that it's being used is liquid. So solid-state batteries aim to have a solid electrolyte there, and solid-state batteries are essentially offering greater stability and therefore greater safety for drivers, in addition to greater capacity, right? So now capacity is important because it really dictates the range that an electric vehicle can achieve. And there are essentially two ways to increase capacity. First is increasing the number of batteries, which is probably not possible, and it's going to make EVs a lot more expensive. The other option is to bring to the market these new batteries with higher energy density, and solid-state batteries have that higher energy density. So definitely a much better technology than what we have today. But probably in terms of commercialization, we're talking like probably 8 to 10 years is when we're going to start seeing those batteries. Right now, you have NCA for Tesla, nickel, cobalt, aluminum batteries, and the other OEMs around the world are using NCM type of batteries, nickel, cobalt, manganese. In China, LFPs are definitely kind of the number one choice for batteries, lithium iron phosphate. So happy to geek out a little bit more there. But
that's so well, dude.
That's awesome. Join us next week for our high school chemistry class, where we explain anodes and cathodes and electrolytes.
So I think also the drive, or at least the compelling effect of the solid state, is they can recharge many more times more, right? Like you can charge them, I think 5,000 times or 10,000 times more than the traditional lithium ion, right?
Yeah, the life cycle is probably around 25 years. So a lot longer than your traditional batteries today, which can last like 15 to 20 years at best. So yeah, life cycle definitely extends with
and currently the life cycle of lithium ion is what, 6 to 8 years roughly, right?
Actually larger than that at the moment, unless you're talking about batteries that were developed 5-7 years ago. Right now, we're talking that your traditional LFP battery can have about 20 years of life cycle, and an NMC battery or nickel-based batteries can have about 15 years, so slightly less than that.
This is actually, thank you so much for explaining that, because that's really important. And I think QuantumScape is a big player in the solid state before this.
Allegedly.
So it's I've been rehearsing this before this particular the SPAC disaster that happened over the last year. SPAC, get that?
The puns here are amazing.
Little that joke there. Anyhow, the QuantumScape was one of these companies everyone was getting into and excited about and so forth, and they may make something happen. But as you said, 5 to 8 years, maybe it's when we think this will happen. But it's something to watch, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
And that's not the only company, right? You have pretty much the major companies: CATL in China, LG Chem, Panasonic. All of these companies are really trying to make a lot of inroads in solid state batteries. Right now, CATL has about 35% market share. LGS, which was spun out of LG Chem just recently, about 23% market share, and Panasonic somewhere around 13%. So another very concentrated segment of the market that potentially could also capture that opportunity. But of course, you also have those new entrants that we'll see if they come up with a much better technologies.
Yeah, and I think it's important, Hatem, to your point, even if QuantumScape does get this going, for people who are our clients or, our investors overall, it's important to understand the difference between a technology that's an idea and what an actual investment is.
Commercialization.
Right? Commercialization and what the stock market actually ultimately cares about. If your technology is 8 to 10 years away, you're not going to probably do well, most likely on the next 5 years in the investment landscape. Like the market cares about 6 to 12 months out, maybe 2 years.
Especially now, right?
Right. Like it's just, so if you're trying to buy QuantumScape or a hydrogen fuel cell company or whatever, because of the hopes that 10 years from now, it's going to be a game changer. Yep. Wait a little bit of time. Right. Number one, the market's not going to care. Number two, there could be multiple other technologies and or companies that come and supplant what you're doing already.
Right. And brings the idea of diversification, right? Like you don't know who the winners are. Like when we started investing in Tesla in 2013, by no means we knew they're going to be the winners. They had some issues. They almost went bankrupt several times, So I think it's important to understand that those risks will always exist with new technologies.
Yeah. So let's shift gears a little bit on the sort of clean side of technology.
Perfect segue, Pedro. Like, one of the things that Gerber Kawasaki stands for is being sustainable and investing in companies that are responsible and so forth, right? And a lot of people say, EVs, obviously we know global warming, but also, lithium is dirty extraction. We're not recycling much. Like currently, I think we don't recycle much of it. But what's, I think in the next 5, 6, 7 years, maybe 70 or 80% of these batteries will be recycled, right? So can you talk through that? Like how much lithium can we recycle? I have some numbers that I got too, I want to share. But can you talk me through that process? Because I think that's a really important place to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. Right now, because EVs are such a small segment of the market, the recycling component is not there yet, excuse me. But yeah, definitely by the end of the decade, you'll start seeing a lot of recycling activity picking up. Again, very small component of the market today, but I think that's definitely going to be important, not only from an environmental standpoint, but also to get access to the raw materials of those batteries. I was talking before about the shortages that you can see in the lithium market, but that also applies to nickel, manganese, cobalt, all of these materials that are very challenging to get access to. That's the other part of it. With recycling, you can start getting access to all of those materials as well.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the naysayers of EVs are thinking to themselves, well, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort, and it's a toll on the environment. Ultimately, where all these batteries are recycled or disposed of, or however we're doing it. So I think, it's really important to kind of consider this. How are we going to accept this challenge that, number one, this technology is very green, very good for the environment, but ultimately we have to consider on the flip side, how do we dispose of this material also?
Yeah. So I have some numbers around that. Like it based on, so right now, as I said, 100% of new batteries are retrieved from the ground for lithium and other materials. And by 2030, we can get as much as 90% of that lithium recycled, right? Like if the numbers work out the way that they're supposed to. JB Straubel, who's one of the co-founders of Tesla, actually left Tesla and created a new company called Redwood Materials, which is focused on recycling batteries. Because if you think in the next 6 or 8 years, you have all these millions of battery coming to basically you can't use them. I mean, how awesome is that business going to be?
Yeah, for sure. And it's not just cars and home batteries, your cell phones, or whatever the future brings that is electrified. We definitely need more entrepreneurs to pick up this slack.
Any players in that space that you're looking at, Pedro? Or?
Yeah, well, you have Ganfeng Lithium probably as the leading company in this space among the publicly traded companies. Ganfeng, I think, last time I checked their 10K or their financials, they were probably generating about 5% of the revenue from recycling activity. So Ganfeng is one of the leading mining companies in the space, but they're really starting to become these vertically integrated player, not only with recycling potential, but also entering also into the battery space as well a little bit. So yeah, that's really the company that comes to mind the most when it comes to recycling.
Yeah. So that's something that we'll definitely be watching for.
Yeah.
For opportunities going forward. Because,
absolutely. If we're mining more and more and more of this stuff and selling more electric cars, then we definitely have to find ways to dispose of it.
Yeah. So looking at my numbers, global demand for lithium will be 12 to 13x over the next 20 years, and cobalt 2x. What other materials we're looking at? You said cobalt. We said
well, we got nickel in the new Tesla batteries, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, Tesla has been using NCA batteries, again, nickel, cobalt, aluminum batteries for many years here in the United States. Now, when they started producing in China, they moved that chemistry to LFP, lithium iron phosphate batteries. So a little bit of a different component there. These batteries have lower energy density, but in China, you don't really need a lot of energy density like you need here in the United States. And these batteries are 20 to 30% cheaper than nickel-based batteries. But to your question, nickel, cobalt, manganese, lithium are kind of those key raw material components for batteries. For us, lithium by far the number one.
Yep. Got it. And I know, so this is kind of a broader technology question, and maybe you don't know the answer to this, but battery technology has not progressed. The chemistry of battery technology overall has not progressed at the same clip as obviously, the microchip software, things like that. Is there any potential for some kind of quantum leap? Maybe this is the solid state battery or however, but is there anything on the horizon? A couple of years ago, I heard several companies claiming that they could charge your phone in 30 seconds, and wireless charging is sort of a thing now. But isn't there
like some kind of freeway you can drive on and charge your battery?
That's the alleged. So obviously, I'm not a scientist. I do have some geeky interest in science. And I remember back to my high school and college level chemistry and physics courses. Electromagnetic fields are just that. They're fields. So theoretically, we should be able to develop processes to ultimately create this. But the chemistry behind it seems to be lagging. Obviously, way smarter people than me have tried and not done well. But is there anything you guys are seeing as far as battery tech and chemistry goes?
Well, the learning rate in terms of the declining cost of batteries is slowing. It's decelerating. And now you're probably estimating that over the next 10 years, batteries are going to get cheaper at a rate of about 10 to 15%. And that's lower than the rate that we were seeing before, above the 20% range on a year-over-year basis. Mm-hmm. Like in terms of chemistry, it's really the same components, but at a different degree of adoption. So for example, right now your standard NMC batteries, again, nickel, manganese, cobalt, is 532, for example, or 622, and that's in terms of fraction. So five times a nickel, 3 times manganese, 2 times cobalt, to that ratio. In the future, that's expected to be 911. So NMC 911, it's kind of the next generation of battery technology that is expected to deliver greater energy density and therefore greater range. So that's where we're seeing the changes happening. But to your point, there is no exponential leap expected over the next few years. Solid state, probably the next generation of batteries. But again, we're so close to reaching price parity with combustion engine cars, probably within the next 1 or 2 years, that EVs already are going to become kind of the no-brainer go option for everyone on the street.
Got it.
I mean, if you look at the markups that dealers are charging, we're already there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The fake Ford charges.
Oh, dude, I saw Ford charging $50,000 markup on.
I'm sorry, how much?
$50,000 on an F-250 pickup. $50,000 on an $80,000 car.
Did they have to make up for the bad earnings they just had?
I don't know. Well, they don't get any of that, right? It goes to the dealer.
To the dealers. Yeah, and that's another thing that's ultimately going to blow up in the next decade.
Man, that's awesome. I mean, that's so much knowledge there, Pedro.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
Okay, I have to ask this question too. There's a lot of issues with other materials being getting from Africa and little kids and mines and so forth. How are we dealing with this? You know, is that a big issue? You know, we know it about diamonds and gold and so forth. Is that an issue with cobalt and nickel?
Yeah, cobalt especially, right? Because most of the cobalt supply comes from the Congo, and that's where you get to see those sort of issues. One, the technology is addressing that. I say that it's going from about 532 or 622 to 911. So so the cobalt component is going to be cut in half approximately in the next generation of battery tech. And then in terms of what's happening with the other materials and environmental impact, you know, I think for lithium, if we take the big picture of the contribution of lithium to the overall industry and climate change goals, I think net lithium is definitely going to have a positive impact. Of course, mining activity is not positive for the environment, and I'm not going to be here lying about that. But net and the contribution of lithium as a key component for EVs and for battery storage and for all of these other technologies, I think it's going to have a much more positive impact. And I was saying 911, I need to correct myself, it's 811 because to the 100%, so 80% nickel, 10% cobalt, and 10% manganese, just to correct me there.
Yeah. You know, everything's relative, right? So mining is not going to be the cleanest thing, but it's definitely cleaner than, you know, pulling oil and coal out of the ground.
And also, you're seeing the biggest miners moving towards, you know, lithium and really kind of getting away from the fossil fuel business too. So this is, as you said, I think it's a net because this shift is happening across all sectors, mobility, mining, and so forth. So overall, positive for the world.
Yeah, and I kind of want to end maybe with this is, you know, we talked a lot about cars today, but what's the future of mobility for other vehicles that we haven't talked about, be it electric helicopters, electric airplanes? Like, is that something that we're seeing in the near future, or are we still 20, 30 years out from that?
Wow, that's a tough one. I like what I'm seeing on eVTOL. You know, I think that's probably one of the technologies that we'll get to see the most in terms of consumer adoption over the next 5 years or so. But yeah, it's also challenging because it involves regulators and kind of how much adoption they will allow the market to have over the next few years.
Yeah. I believe in human ingenuity. I think we'll figure it out. I mean, listen, I think our job is to be optimistic and see the positive in things.
Yeah.
And global warming is obviously real. I mean, disasters are happening. I saw yesterday a report that last year hurricanes cost the economy $200 billion just in 1 year.
Have you seen the chart of what like natural disasters, weather-related disasters have been over the last like 15 years? It's insanity.
Yeah,
it's basically a straight line up.
I mean, we don't even have a fire season in California anymore.
Yeah,
it's the whole year, right? Yeah. So I'm glad these technologies are taking over, and I think, you know, being able to really invest in these companies and seeing that positive movement towards resolving these problems, and also seeing everyone buying in, right? Europe is doing it. A lot of the ice makers are moving towards electrification.
Yeah.
You know, I think 20% of emissions are from cars. So it's not everything, but it's a big step.
Yeah, it's a huge step, and whether you love Elon Musk or you hate him, you know, you have to respect the guy. He's the guy who pushed the first domino, and everybody else has fallen. If he didn't succeed, if Tesla didn't succeed in doing what they're doing, regardless of our investment with them, without what Elon did, the rest of this doesn't happen. And maybe later on somebody else comes along. But for those of you who don't know this, the electric motor is older than the internal combustion engine. Okay, so we've had it for 140 years basically. And we've been stuck in the internal combustion engine for basically more than a century now, because of various ideas. You know, I'm not going to get into all politics and all that stuff, but the point is that somebody had to be the first one to push the domino, and he did it. And now there's, you know, the momentum is now there, and ultimately it's just not going to stop now.
Yeah. So listen, it's been an awesome conversation, Pedro. Not only your sexy accent, but your knowledge is insane. Thank you for being here. Some disclosures: LIT is a big holding for Gerber Kawasaki. Not simply because they do amazing work, but we really believe in that sector as really transformational for the next 10 years or so, and it's going to continue to be. There's some great ideas here. We'll be looking at what comes from this. So
for sure. Pedro, as always, thank you so much for your insight. We Hatem and I have talk a lot with Pedro and with Global X. We appreciate your insight. We know that you guys think similar to us. We love having you on. I think this is the second time we've had you on one of the talks that we've done, and hopefully we look forward to doing more with you guys.
No, thank you, and looking forward to the next one, of course.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, man. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye, Pedro.